we're going to change subjects and go from baseball to the track, as we're going to get a Watkins Glen preview with our NASCAR expert who's fresh from pit row. NASCAR expert, how you doing today?
Doing real good, my friend. It's been a few weeks, but we'll get everyone caught up on what's happening in a pretty exciting last couple of weeks in the NASCAR world.
Yeah, take us through what are the latest news, notes, and what's really catching your eye from a storyline standpoint.
So over the last three races, we talk about the playoff cut line and new winners. Well, the last three races, we've had Chris Buescher, who won a race last year in the playoffs and potentially could have won a race this year. He won back-to-back races at Richmond and Michigan, which he was a plus 5,000 and a plus 4,500 to win those races. And I can guarantee you, if there was odds on Chris Buescher winning back-to-back races in Vegas, it would have been astronomical. And then follow up last week at Indy Road Course. Chase Elliott needs to get in. We've talked about that many times. Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell has one career win back in the Daytona 500 years ago when Penske teammates crashed and he ended up taking the lead. Michael McDowell was in our top 10 selections last week because he's a really good road course racer and he's accrued the most points in this next-gen car over the last 2 years, but I had him in the top 10 not to win. I didn't think Michael McDowell and that front row motorsports team was ready to win, but they went out and kicked everyone's butt. I mean, it was a dominating performance by him. He held off all comers, Chase Elliott, Daniel Suarez, and went on to win. So this playoff cut line right now, with 2 races to go, is really, really interesting. And if we get another new winner at Watkins Glen, man, that Daytona night race is going to be for all the marbles.
I cannot wait for that Daytona night race because not just it has a lot on the line, but it's such a perfect setting. But we're not quite there yet. What should we know about Watkins Glen as a track as we get ready for this weekend?
So Watkins Glen is in upstate New York. It's probably, some people describe it as a super speedway of road courses. It's the fastest road course of anyone that we run. It's somewhat technical, but just really fast. You come through the S's really quick. The front stretch into turn 1 is really fast. And, you might say, okay, last week at the Indy Road Course, we had Michael McDowell, Chase Elliott, Daniel Suarez. These guys are really fast. Will that translate over? Yes and no. It'll translate over to the fact of these guys are really good road course racers. As I mentioned, Chase Elliott this year has been actually pretty good at road courses. He's finished 5th, 3rd, and 2nd at 3 other road courses this year. And yeah, it'll translate over. But as far as the setup and the handling of it, it's much different. Like I mentioned, Watkins Glen is really fast, and there's elevation changes there. Whereas the Indy Road Course is very flat, very smooth, and so some setup stuff will not translate over. So you got to kind of be careful. You can't just pluck the guys from last week and drop them into this week and think that you're going to be in good shape.
Who do you have as a standout driver this week that you put some, I don't want to say money on, but you put your confidence level pretty high on them having a successful week?
Well, I think if you take a look at Kyle Larson is probably a layup for a top 10. I'm sure it's going to come at pretty high odds, but he's won the last 2 races here, and he's always running up front at Watkins Glen. So that's a driver to take a look at that I necessarily wouldn't put a whole lot on it just because the odds are probably not going to be there, but Kyle Larson definitely, I'm sure, will be running inside the top 10, if not top 5 all day.
You just heard it here. Our NASCAR expert has been fantastic this season. I know he's a very modest and humble person, but if you've been following our NASCAR picks that we put out on our website, FumbleSports.com, we also put out videos for who we think are going to finish in the top 10, who we think could win the race. Those have been incredibly successful, so I want to encourage you guys, make sure you follow us, hit that follow button, make sure you subscribe, make sure you go to our website, FumbleSports.com. Now, changing gears from someone we think is going to have a successful race to someone who may finish at the back of the pack, who are a few drivers that you would stay away from at Watkins Glen?
Well, some guys that are kind of hovering around the cut line right now that are just trying to survive Watkins Glen. And Bubba Wallace is one of those guys. He's not really been a great road course guy. He's gotten better over the years, but Watkins Glen is a really, really tough track to get a hold of. So Bubba is sitting right now in the 16th spot in the playoffs, plus 28 to the cut line. But I'd be very careful with him this week. He's just probably going to try to get stage points, maybe go off strategy and try to get as many points as he can heading to Daytona. And one guy I would maybe, Daniel Suarez was really fast last week, and he's hovering around the cut line. He's minus 28 and 17th right now, and I know he ran really well last week, and he's been somewhat quick at the road courses this year, but I just, I think that when you have a run like he did last week and he had a problem in the pits that kind of put him back, that he's going to have more pressure on himself because going to Watkins Glen is probably going to be his only shot. He's okay at super speedway racing, but you can't go to Daytona and think you're going to come out of there with a win because that is just, put all the numbers in a hat and just throw them on the floor and pick one when it comes to Daytona. So Suarez had a really good run last week, but I would be really careful with him coming back to the Glen this week, as there's a lot of pressure on the 99 team.
We're going to get back to talking some baseball, some fantasy football, because I know a lot of people are joining us to talk about that. But before we let you go, I know our NASCAR expert always wants to give a plug for the growth of auto racing. Please go right ahead.
Yeah, so we talk about it here all the time. A lot of these drivers in the Cup Series and all different forms of top level of motorsports, they come from the grassroots. And the grassroots are all the local tracks, whether it's a dirt track, an asphalt track. All around the country, there are thousands of races that run almost every single night of the week, not even just the weekends. But I just encourage you to go out and support them. They're the ultimate small business owner, and they need to fill the stands to keep it going. And like I said, you can go there and you might see the next Chase Elliott. You might see the next Kyle Larson that come through the ranks, because these are where these guys come from. And it's a family atmosphere. It's a lot cheaper than going out to Major League Baseball game or NFL these days. It's pretty reasonable to go. The concession stands are usually a local flair of wherever you're at. So I can almost guarantee you within 30 minutes of anywhere anyone listening here, there's a local short track that you can go and support and just learn about racing. If you're, kind of interested in it and you just want to maybe, dip your toe in the water, go to the local short track. You can figure out how a schedule runs, how they go from practice to qualifying to the race, what kind of rules there are, what color are the flags. So there's a lot to be learned just by going and soaking in that atmosphere of our grassroots level of racing.
Something that I've definitely been exposed to. I went to Indiana University when I went to college, and when you go to Indiana, you get not just a BA in basketball, but you certainly get at least a minor in auto racing. And what was so great is I got to see it on a grassroots level, and I encourage all of you guys, it's like minor league baseball, but for auto racing. You can follow the drivers, you can follow the different styles as you go from one level to the next. And I certainly want to encourage it for all of those that aren't exposed to Formula One or NASCAR, but Fumble Sports is really committed to try to bring some of that knowledge to you guys into the forefront, because sometimes it gets forgotten. And I want to give a big shout out to our NASCAR expert for making this knowledge accessible. Make sure you keep track of his picks, because they have been red hot. Brilliant job by you. Want to let you go now and let you get back under the hood of a car. But for now, I just want to say thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Sounds good. Have a good rest of the show.